Earlier today, one lucky cameraman happened to catch an unusual aquatic daredevil. What you're about to see is an ABJ News exclusive. His name is Nutty the Squirrel, and he's 3 years old. Would you look at that? That squirrel can water ski. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dan Rather, and I'm joined by Agatha Stout with ABJ News.
Our top story tonight addresses the possibility of a flat tax rate proposed today by our governing bodies. This will affect all Canadians across the nation, both individually and through businesses. This proposed rate will affect all at the provincial and federal level.
Studies have found that high marginal tax rates reduce economic growth. This economic growth is a key indicator of an economy's health. Governments have noted this fact, and it is one of their main motivations in proposing the new flat tax rate.
As we know currently, Alberta is the only province with a flat tax rate of 10%, while the other provinces' marginal tax rates are listed here. The marginal tax rate refers to the amount that is taxed per extra dollar of income earned.
We will now join Olga, who is inside City Hall gathering the opinions of individuals in our community on this proposed flat tax rate.
I'm Olga Stein on location in City Hall, asking the public for their opinion.
Let's say there's no income tax, okay? So there's no income tax at all, which means if your house gets flooded, you're on your own. If you want to go to school, you're on your own. So that everything that the government currently gives you money for, you're on your own, okay? So the other end is everything you make goes to the government. And so you don't have to, and so you don't have to worry about anything. The government, you just earn stuff and the government will take care of you. I think both those ends we get really, really scared about, right? So the question is, where do you want to be? And where do you want to be? And in Canada, at the end of the day, we like to know that in the day our government is going to be able to help us in certain situations. But with that comes a cost. So you have to be able to put money into that system. So should people who earn more put more in? That's the end of the ultimate question, right? And if you have a flat tax rate, then that's not the case. You're just saying everyone pays the same percent. Should that? So it's not really it's a philosophical question. And so I think at the end of the day, if you want to live in a society where you're taken care of, and whether or not that's because you earn less or you're unfortunate, then we need people to put money into that system. And people who have that money are the folks that make more money. So if you like that type of an environment, then I think you have to be prepared to pay more if you make more, which means I don't agree with the flat tax system. So,
George, what do you think of a flat tax rate for the federal government of Canada?
I don't think a flat tax rate would be so well for Canadians. I think our social services would plummet, and I don't think it would go very well.
Not good. And why do you say this? Because need to tax people with a higher income, pay more money. Sean, what do you think of flat tax rate for the government of Canada?
Flat tax rate? I don't think that's such a good idea because the progressive tax system puts a heavier weighting on those who can afford to pay those higher taxes. So I think that would be more beneficial.
Alright, what is your take on flat tax rate for the government of Canada?
As far as flat tax rate goes, I think I'm okay with the marginal tax rate that we have in place, more so because I think that people who have higher incomes deserve to pay more tax. That's just frank in my opinion. I think that kind of a flat tax rate doesn't necessarily benefit anybody below that middle class income level, and then I don't think that that's fair. So I think the marginal tax rate that we have in place is something that I enjoy a little bit better. Flat tax rate.
Dallas, what do you think of a flat tax rate for the government of Canada?
I think it's fair. It's a flat rate that I guess could be applied to everybody.
How do you think it would affect everyone as a whole, like the lower wages and the higher wages?
I mean, I guess it kind of seems like it's proportionate based on what your income is. So, I mean, it's probably not going to have the greatest effect on people that are lower income, but it's still going to work for the higher income people that still have to pay their fair share. So.
Sean, what do you think is good about a flat tax rate?
I actually don't think a flat tax rate is good. I prefer a progressive tax rate. I mean, flat tax rate does have benefits in that theoretically people with higher incomes can put more back into the economy because of tax laws, but I think it's better to tax them more and get more money.
What's your take on a flat federal tax rate for Canada?
I think a flat federal tax rate is pretty good. and even it would help motivate individuals just to work harder and earn more money, since they don't have to give a huge chunk of it back to the government. And then the huge disadvantages of it is just that the government is just going to be losing all this revenue on taxes. So I don't know where they will get money to pay for education and healthcare and all those things.
Travis, what do you think of Canada getting a flat tax rate?
I think it'd be good. Give people more incentive to earn more money.
And how do you think this would affect you as a student?
It really would. I don't really have any.
Alright, we heard it here. How do you feel about having a flat tax rate for Canada?
Well, personally, making a lot of money, I'd like a flat tax rate because it would mean I'd pay less taxes and get to keep more of the money I earn.
And that's the perspective of the general public. I'm Olga Stein. Back to you, Agatha.
Thank you, Olga, for those opinions. To get a better perspective on how this tax rate will really affect businesses and individuals across Canada, we had Professor Carla Cardigan from the University of Lethbridge call in earlier today with her input.
Carla, what do you think of a federal flat tax rate for Canada?
I think it would be a bad idea,
And why would you think this?
because usually one of the principles we want in taxation is progressive taxation, and if you put in a flat tax rate, you're ignoring that principle. You're basically saying people with very little income, they should pay the same tax rate as people with considerable income, and I don't think that's in keeping with the spirit of being a progressive tax.
Do you think this would have any effect on the social services that Canada provides?
Definitely. You would have to provide more to people with less income because effectively you're taxing the way and then giving it back again. And for people in higher incomes, it's kind of irrelevant to them for the most part other than for healthcare. And they generally need less healthcare anyhow because healthcare is partly reflected by your socioeconomic status. If you're a higher economic group, you typically need less healthcare.
Wonderful.
And now we have tax professional Alvin Rabushka in the studio, who in fact created this proposed model for the Government of Canada, along with Robert Hall. He is a professor at Stanford University and is here today with his views on the possibility of his model being implemented. Thanks for coming in today, Alvin.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Professor Cardigan said that by implementing a flat tax rate, the government would be breaking the principle of the progressive model by taking more from those with lower incomes rather than the rich who can afford to pay more. What is your stance on this?
Well, Cardigan's opinion is certainly in line with those of lower incomes. However, with a progressive model, those in higher tax brackets are encouraged not to work any harder as they're taxed very high on a marginal basis. With this tax rate lowered, investing and also spending would increase largely, creating a more active economy. The more active an economy becomes, the higher demand for labor rises, which increases the wage for all, even those in lower tax brackets.
Would you say that a flat tax rate would take away from the lower income families' abilities to use or receive health benefits?
It has been proven that there is a high correlation between lower incomes and usage of health benefits. Instead of taxing those not responsible, it seems sensible that those who use more health services are taxed just as much as others. Keep in mind that a flat tax rate still taxes higher incomes a higher total amount. Every extra dollar earned is simply taxed at the same rate.
Okay, Eldon, tell us more about your flat tax model.
The model that I've created, or the Hall-Rabushka model, replaces the current personal income tax system with an individual wage tax. It only applies to wages, salaries, and pension benefits. One's taxable income is simply the sum of these three minus the basic personal exemption, which is a set maximum amount that one can make without having to pay tax. This tax calculation, and a tax form that is just as easy to fill out, would apply to 85% of Canadian taxpayers. Corporate income, on the other hand, is calculated using gross margin from the sales of goods and services minus a few deductions. These deductions are the cost of inputs, wages and salaries, and capital investments. The remainder of income is subject to the same rate as the individual tax rate.
Now, Alvin, what would you say is the benefit of an easier tax system?
With our current system, compliance costs, which are professional, software, and other related costs to file, range from $16 to $25 billion. By adopting an easier system, these costs could be put to better use by corporations.
Thank you, Alvin.
Thanks again to Alvin Rabushka for coming to our studio today.
And now it's time for sports with Amanda.
Thanks, Dan. Today in sports, we are down to our final 4 teams in the NCAA Championship, with the Jazz Taxphones playing the Evaders in the Western Final. and the Evasionists against the Martha Stewarts, who nobody would have expected to make it this far with their inability to play consistently throughout the season. Their stats are constantly going up and down, can't keep a good record, and can be summarized as rather marginal play. The Evasionists, however, have played strongly and are the main pick for most sports enthusiasts, and can be seen as a consistently good, flat team. I'd like to send it back to Dan and Agatha.
And that was Amanda with sports. Now, as we do in every newscast, we throw up a poll for our viewers to tweet in with comments on tonight's top story about the switch to flat tax rates. Which tax rate do you prefer? Tweet us at ABJ News with #flat or #marginal. And now this will bring an end to our evening's broadcast. From all of us here at ABJ News, we would like to say,
You stay classy, Lethbridge.